Oklahoma's Republican leaders rolled out their new fiscal year 2027 budget that starts July 1st like it was a story of discipline, responsibility, and smart priorities. But once you strip away the applause lines, it looks less like fiscal restraint and more like a familiar fairy tale. First, protect the giveaways that benefit wealthy families, favored industries, and powerful corporations. Then tell everyone else there just is not enough money for education, healthcare, and nutrition. The real issue is not whether Oklahoma has the money. The real issue is what Republican leaders keep choosing to value. Here is the big picture. Start with roughly $250 million for private school vouchers. Add about $200 million from reduced tax treatment for horizontal wells. Add around $50 million for the Quality Jobs Program. Add another $50 million in other tax credits and deferrals. Then add the new $200 million endowment fund. That gets you to $750 million. Against a budget of about $12.79 billion, that is roughly 5.9% of the entire state budget going to wealthy families and businesses rather than to the 700,000 kids in public schools and Oklahoma families struggling to get access to health care and nutrition programs. If the goal were really to grow Oklahoma's economy and improve the lives of the majority of our citizens, the choices would look different. Real economic growth does not start with tax preferences for wealthy families and businesses and endowment fund talking points. Years of data across many states proves it starts with stronger schools, better health, better nutrition, and a workforce that earns enough where a person can support a family with a single job. That is what long-run growth looks like in the real world. Republicans will argue that a lot of these programs are for economic development even though their own watchdog, the Incentive Evaluation Commission, has criticized the return on taxpayers' dollars and made recommendations to cut back or cancel some of these programs. But there is lots of data on the return on taxpayer money invested in people. A child who learns to read on grade level is economic development. A family that can get health coverage is economic development. A community with mental health access is economic development. A young person who can afford training, college, or career preparation is economic development. Those are not side issues. Those are the foundations of long-run economic growth for the most successful states. Here is the trade-off in plain English. For about $250 million, the cost of the voucher program that serves roughly 35,000 students compared to 700,000 public school students, Oklahoma could have funded 5,000 new certified teachers at $50,000 each. For $200 million, the cost of the new savings fund, Oklahoma could have funded 4,000 new teachers at that same salary. The fact Republican leaders did not choose to do this is not a budget constraint. That is a policy choice to transfer taxpayer dollars to the 90.7% of families who already had their kids in private schools, 40% of which had incomes over $150,000 and 20% over $250,000. Now take the remaining $500 million tied up in oil and gas tax breaks, quality jobs, and other tax preferences. That money could have funded a very different vision for Oklahoma. About $30 million to begin to expand Union's successful community schools across the state, $80 million for mental health access statewide, about $30 million to provide summer food support for 250,000 children, $100 million to strengthen access to medical care and provider support particularly in rural areas, and $260 million for workforce training and career tech expansion. That is what economic development looks like when you invest in people instead of protecting special deals. Part of Oklahoma's healthcare pressure is coming from Washington. Federal Republicans can claim savings on paper, but they just pushed costs back to the states. That means more pressure on sooner care and more risk that access to care gets weaker for the families who need it most. That is not real federal cost reduction. It is cost shifting. Oklahoma lawmakers themselves said more than $100 million had to go to the Oklahoma Health Care Authority for program growth and replacing reduced federal matching dollars. Republicans will point to a 3% teacher raise in the budget. Fine, teachers deserve it. But a raise is not the same thing as a serious teacher pipeline strategy. This chart tells the real story. Oklahoma's educational standing got worse while emergency certifications climbed. That means the system is under strain. It means more classrooms are being filled under emergency conditions because the state has not built a strong enough pipeline of fully certified teachers. And this budget does not fix that problem. If lawmakers were serious about improving education outcomes, they would rebuild the profession at the front end, and that means starting pay. Oklahoma's average starting teacher salary is $41,152. Texas starts at $48,526. Arkansas starts at $50,031. New Mexico starts at $53,400. In a teacher shortage, that is not a small gap. That is a recruiting problem our Republican legislators created by underfunding education. That is the real reason Oklahoma's rankings have continued to decline to dead last since they took over all three branches of government in 2011. If the priorities of one-party Republican government since 2011 were really working, why is Oklahoma's life expectancy ranked 45th in the U.S. at only 73.8 years? That is even below Cuba and Costa Rica, countries with fewer economic resources than Oklahoma. But they made different choices about health care, nutrition, education, and public well-being. Bragging about a future tax endowment while people today are dying younger than they should is not just a budget failure but a moral failure. And now the biggest fairy tale of all. The claim that a $200 million endowment fund puts Oklahoma on the path to eliminating the income tax at the interest rate on the 10-year Treasury note. A 4.25% yield, that fund would generate only about $8.6 million a year. Oklahoma collected about $4.926 billion in individual income tax revenue. Replacing that would require an endowment of roughly $114.6 billion. Not million, billion. This is not a serious replacement plan for personal income taxes. It is a political prop that pulls money away from programs that can improve the well-being of Oklahoma citizens. This is the real story of this new Republican budget. Oklahoma is not too poor to do better. Oklahoma's leaders just keep making the same choices. Protect the giveaways to wealthy individuals and businesses, protect the favored interests, and then tell everyone else to wait for the kind of government services they are entitled to receive. A good public education, access to affordable health care and nutrition programs, especially for the 17% of kids in our state who are considered food insecure. This budget does a disservice to the majority of people in our state. It is a fractured Republican fairy tale.